This week's leftovers of the week segment will feature this lovely lady who will tell us about her date number 456 and why that is.
So, wish me luck. Running to go on date number 456. So, wish me luck. Running out of men in Toronto.
Wow, 455 dates so far, and none of those men were good enough for this princess in her 30s, who doesn't own a brush and is still lonely and single. And my second thought is wow, that's a lot of free dinners and drinks and rides home and probably some movie tickets and other things that she's gathered from those 455 men. But not a clue why that's happening, because there are people in your comment section, and by people I mean men, people who you should be taking advice from. Advice from other single women literally will be the worst advice you'll ever have. But here's what she thinks about that advice, right? She's basically saying that, all of these comments are dumb and people are trolling. But these are the people who are essentially telling her why she is going on a date 456 and most likely is now on 457, 458, and so forth and so forth. Uh, I've always said this.
Wish me luck.
Sorry.
Running out of men in Toronto.
I've always said this. Women are the dumbest species in the world when it comes to finding the right mate. An earthworm is better at finding a mate because the earthworm doesn't have all these ridiculously high standards for what it really has to offer. It finds the mate and it continues the generation. I don't think this is happening, with humans anymore. I mean, do you understand now? I'm sure she's exaggerating that it's 456 men, but I guarantee you that it is a quite large number where she doesn't get the second dates. Either men recognize that she's not dateable, or she thinks that she's too hot or too valuable for this average man. The average women like her do not want average men. And you know what? An average man in America is not a bad man. An average man in America makes 50, $60,000, which is more than enough to have a family, not in New York or San Francisco, but in suburbs of Houston, Texas, for example, or somewhere in Minnesota. That is more than enough to put a roof over the family's heads and provide them with vehicles to get to their jobs and to get to school. These are good men who may not be PhD educated, but who care about their wives and care about the families. They will make good husbands and good fathers. But these are not good enough, right? These men are not good enough for average women. Now, I understand when really good-looking women want high-value men. Now, those women still have not as much to offer as they once did, and that's why those high-value men pass on that, or leave America and come here to Southeast Asia, Thailand, Philippines, and South America. But we've covered that enough, and we'll cover it again on this channel. But I'm talking about fucking average looking girl who is now in her 30s that somehow cannot find a man. Date after date after date after date, and no one's good enough. And knowing how much men simp, it is mind-boggling that these women still cannot end up with someone, right? And this has never been easier. The dating life has never been easier for women ever in a history of the universe as it is right now. They can simply open their dating apps and have hundreds of simps offer them attention, validation, money, all of the drugs that women love nowadays. And yet, none of it None of it is good enough for these princesses. And that's why in the next video, in the next 5 or 10 years, you will see her crying about how she's now not able to have kids, and feels like nobody really wants her, and all the men that she's trying to flirt with doesn't really want her. They're all flirting with 22-year-olds or in Thailand now. And now she's going to be surrounded both by her cats and prescription for antidepressants. Like, there's a famous painting, I forget its name, but it's a bunch of blind people, having, walking somewhere, and each man has a hand on the other one's shoulder, right? So but the first guy is already accidentally is falling down into a trench, right? And he's like, oh shit, and the second guy is realizing he's just about to fall, so he's like, oh shit, right? But the third guy and the fourth and fifth guy, who doesn't know what's happening ahead, because they're blind, are still smiling and laughing and whatever. And they don't know that only seconds later they're going to be in the ditch with the rest of the guys trying to get out, right? This is how I think about Western women, right? Like, it's so easy to see those women in their 30s and 40s in the ditch, essentially, in a dating ditch, despite all of these choices and options they've had, right? And yet, the women in their 20s are still smiling, go like, yeah, I'm going to get tattoos and fucking nose rings, and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get married. There's plenty of time. They don't see that only in a few years, this is going to be them. And she might be smiling now, but I guarantee you that when she comes back from those dates by herself, and has to spend yet another night by herself, there is no smile on her face. There's just not. If you want to ditch modern women and move abroad for more traditional relationships, go to themillionmanproject.com, take my most comprehensive course, and change your life.